WSST, because local matters.
The J.W. Williams Funeral Directors have been proudly serving the people of this community since 1918. Service is our motto. The poor, the rich, the middle class, and all are given the best of care and attention at all times. You have the privilege to select what you want. In your time of need, contact the capable, the competent, and the dependable staff of the J.W. Williams Funeral Home, who is genuinely concerned with your care. At J.W. Williams Funeral Home, you are aptly served by the proprietor president, Deacon Arthur L. Parker, who continues the traditions and values set forth by the past president, Dr. Napoleon Williams. Your announcements for the J.W. Williams Funeral Home Sunday morning program are Deacon Arthur L. Parker, Reverend Isaac H. Owens, Mrs. Calandra Wilkerson Parker, Minister Frankie Harmon, Miss Sandra Johnson, and Deacon Earl Clark, Jr.
Certainly hope that your day may be brighter after listening to our program. The family of Mother Evelyn Redding Smith of Vienna, Georgia. The family of United States Army veteran Chris County Sheriff Office Corporal Avery Delshawn Hillman of Cordele, Georgia. The family of Mother Evelyn Redding Smith of Vienna, Georgia. The family of United States Army veteran and Chris County Sheriff Office Corporal Avery Delshawn Hillman of Cordele, Georgia. The family of beloved church mother, Mother Mary Jean Clark Mumphrey of Cordele, Georgia. The family of Mr. Arthur James Nance Jr. of Cordele, Georgia. The family of missionary Ruby Lee Marshall Daniels of Rochelle, Georgia, would like to thank their many friends for the food, the flowers, the condolences, and all other expressions of sympathy and kindness shown to them during their hours of sorrow and bereavement during the past week. Mother Evelyn Redding Smith, age 88, of 710 Grant Street, Vienna, Georgia, died Sunday, November 1st at her residence in Vienna, Georgia. The funeral service for Mother Evelyn Redding Smith was held Thursday, November 5th, graveside at the Vienna City Cemetery in Vienna, Georgia. The Reverend Charles Cobb, Sr., pastor of the Free Providence Baptist Church and the Spring Hill Baptist Church, officiated. Survivors include her loving and devoted children, Mr. Andrew Smith and his wife, Mrs. Deborah Smith of Vienna, Georgia, Miss Peggy Smith of Houston, Texas, Miss Angela Smith of Atlanta, Georgia, Mrs. Margaret Rembrandt and her husband, Mr. Timothy Rembrandt, and Miss Jacqueline Peterson, both of Vienna, Georgia. Mr. Marcus Smith and his wife, Mrs. Joanna Smith of Seattle, Washington. Mr. Jerome Smith and his wife, Mrs. Shawn Smith of Jacksonville, Florida, and Mr. Nelvis T. Smith of Vienna, Georgia. A beloved goddaughter, Miss Beverly Vance of Cordele, Georgia. 23 beloved grandchildren, 46 great-grandchildren, her loving and devoted sisters, Mrs. Bonita F. Green of Valdosta, Georgia, Mrs. Deborah J. Hamilton of Atlanta, Georgia, her beloved brothers, Mr. Calvin Hamilton and Mr. Alvin Hamilton, both of Valdosta, Georgia, several aunts and uncles, cousins, other relatives in Miami, Florida, Orlando, Florida, and Montezuma, Georgia. A host of friends to include a special friend, Miss Eva Ross of Vienna, Georgia. Two beloved friends, Mrs. Frances Robinson and Mrs. Ethel Lee Jones, both of Vienna, Georgia, survived. Mother Evelyn Redding Smith, age 88, of 710 Grant Street, Vienna, Georgia. United States Army veteran, Corporal Avery Delshawn Hillman of the Chris County Sheriff's Office, age 50, of 1823 South Georgia Highway 90, Cordele, Georgia, died Saturday, October 31st at the Houston Medical Center in Warner Robins, Georgia. The funeral service with military honors and sheriff honors for United States Army veteran Corporal Avery Delshawn Hillman was held Friday, November 6th, graveside at the Sunnyside Cemetery in Cordele, Georgia. Brother James Wise of the Kingdom Hall of Jehovah's Witnesses officiated. Survivors include his loving and devoted wife, Mrs. Cherie Pettigrew Hillman of Cordele, Georgia. A beloved and devoted son, Mr. Malachi Del Avery Hillman of Cordele, Georgia. His loving and devoted daughters, Miss Avisha Lewis and her husband, Mr. Chris Lewis of Cordele, Georgia, and Miss Jada Hilsman of Atlanta, Georgia. His beloved and devoted parents, Deacon Johnny C. Hillman and Mrs. Gwen Ray Hillman, a beloved brother, Mr. Derek Hillman, and his wife, Mrs. Tasha Hillman of Atlanta, Georgia. His father-in-law, Brother Fred Pettigrew, and his wife, Mrs. Joanne Pettigrew, of Warner Robins, Georgia. His brother-in-law, Mr. Marquise Pettigrew, and his wife, Mrs. Leanna Pettigrew of Houston, Texas. His sister-in-law, Miss Camille P. Brown, and her husband, Mr. L.T. Brown of Virginia. A host of cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends survived. United States Army veteran, Corporal Avery Delshawn Hillman of the Chris County Sheriff's Office, age 50, of 1823 South Georgia Highway 90, Cordele, Georgia. Beloved church mother, Mother Mary Jean Clark Mumphrey, age 86, of 1210 South 15th Street, Cordele, Georgia, died Friday, October 30th, at the Phoebe Putney Memorial Hospital in Albany, Georgia. The funeral service for Mother Mary Jean Clark Mumphrey was held Friday, November 6th, on the grounds of her beloved Crossroad Baptist Church in Cordele, Georgia. The burial followed at the Bethel Cemetery in Cordele, Georgia. Her pastor, the Reverend Nelson Maynor, officiated. Her beloved son-in-law, the Reverend Nikita Lester, delivered the eulogy. Survivors include her beloved and devoted children, Mrs. Dorothy Nicholson of Rosedale, New York, Mrs. Faye M. Pondexter, and her husband, Mr. Thomas Pondexter of Jacksonville, Florida, Mrs. Eddie Mae Lester and her husband, the Reverend Nikita Lester, Chairman Deacon Jimmy Charles Montfrey and his wife, Mrs. Carol Montfrey, Mrs. Cynthia White and her husband, Deacon Don White, all of Cordele, Georgia. Miss Davida M. Montfrey of McDonald, Georgia. 12 beloved grandchildren. Her beloved sisters, Mrs. Annie L. Williams of Oakfield, Georgia, and Ms. Flora Comer of Milton, Massachusetts. 2 sisters-in-law, 1 brother-in-law, a host of nieces, nephews, cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends survive. Beloved church mother, Mother Mary Jean Montfrey, age 86, of 1210 South 15th Street, Cordele, Georgia. Mr. Arthur James Nance, Jr., age 59, of 102 Charlie Lee Circle, Cordele, Georgia, died Saturday, October 24th, at his residence in Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for Mr. James Arthur Nance, Jr. was held Saturday, November 7th, graveside at the Mount Olive Baptist Church Cemetery in Warwick, Georgia. The Reverend Matthew Spann, pastor of the Kingdom Life Ministry, officiated. Survivors include his loving and devoted daughter, Mrs. Tamika Mercer, and her husband, Mr. Terrence Mercer of Jacksonville, Florida. 1 beloved grandchild, Miss Taylor Mercer of Jacksonville, Florida. His beloved and devoted mother, Mrs. Mary Lou Williams Nance of Cordele, Georgia. His loving and caring sibling, Mr. James E. Nance, Miss Mariah J. Nance, Miss Laura A. Nance Glover, and her husband, Mr. Paul Glover. Miss Mary L. Nance, Mr. Marvin D. Nance, and his wife, Mrs. Nicole Nance, Mrs. Angela D. Nance Hall, and her husband, Mr. Alonzo Hall, Mr. Melvin E. Nance, and Mrs. Tina D. Nance Hoggerbrook, and her husband, Mr. Andrew Hoggerbrook Sr., all of Jacksonville, Florida. His beloved aunts and uncles, Mrs. Ethel Atkins, and Mr. David G. Williams and his wife, Mrs. Dorothy Williams, all of Cordele, Georgia, Mrs. Margaret Edwards of Jacksonville, Florida, Mrs. Garfield Richardson, Mrs. Ernestine Davis, and Mrs. Betty Ann Smothers, all of Winter Haven, Florida. Mrs. Shirley Long and her husband, Mr. Curtis Long of Nashville, Tennessee. A host of nieces, nephews, cousins, other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends survive. Mr. Arthur James Nance, Jr., age 59, of 102 Charlie Lee Circle, Cordele, Georgia. Missionary Ruby Lee Marshall Daniels, age 65, of 46 Hill Street, Rochelle, Georgia, died Sunday, November 1st, at the Chris Regional Hospital in Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for missionary Ruby Lee Marshall Daniels was held Saturday, November 7th, graveside at the Pine City Baptist Church Cemetery in Rochelle, Georgia. Bishop Cleveland Dennison officiated. Survivors include two living and devoted daughters, Mrs. Jasmine Daniels of Rochelle, Georgia, Mrs. Christy Balaam and her husband, Mr. Isaac Balaam of Cordele, Georgia. Three devoted sons, Mr. Philip Marshall and Mr. Jackie Daniels and his wife, Mrs. Kia Daniels of Leesburg, Georgia, and Minister Lenore Daniels and his wife, Mrs. Jessica Daniels of Warner Robins, Georgia. Her loving and devoted grandchildren, Miss Lucretia Lawson, Mr. Nicholas Marshall Sr., Mr. Afrina Daniels, Miss Deja Daniels, Mr. Darian Daniels, Miss Lincoln Daniels, Miss J.C. Northcutt, Miss Jewel Daniels, and Master Michael Daniels. Sisters, Mrs. Mary Trotman and her husband, Mr. Richard Trotman of Pitts, Georgia. Miss Geneva Howard and her husband, Mr. Rufus Howard of Rochelle, Georgia. Miss Dolores Marshall Edgerton of Louisiana. Her beloved brothers, Mr. Floyd Patterson and his wife, Mrs. Daisy Patterson of Rochelle, Georgia. Mr. Oscar Marshall of Louisiana. Her special goddaughters, Miss Lisa Brunette and her husband, Mr. Forrest Brunette of Albany, Georgia. Miss Natasha James and her husband, Mr. Joe James of Atlanta, Georgia. A host of nieces, nephews, an exceptional friend, Miss Claudette Dennison, and a host of other relatives, and many sorrowing friends survived. Missionary Ruby Lee Marshall Daniels, age 65, of 46 Hill Street, Rochelle, Georgia. Again, the family of Mother Evelyn Redding Smith of Vienna, Georgia, the family of United States Army veteran and Chris County Sheriff Office Corporal Avery Delshawn Hillman of Cordele, Georgia, the family of beloved church mother, Mother Mary Jean Clark Mumphrey of Cordele, Georgia, the family of Mr. Arthur James Nance Jr. of Cordele, Georgia, the family of missionary Ruby Lee Marshall Daniels of Rochelle, Georgia, would like to thank their many friends for all of the many kindnesses shown to them during the hours of sorrow and bereavement during the past week. May God bless each of you is their prayer. The J.W. Williams Funeral Directors serving Cordele and Vienna were in charge of each of these arrangements during the past week. And now, it is certainly with the deepest regret that we make the following announcement. Retired educator, Mrs. Gloria Dean Henderson Martin, age 71, of 9310 Highway 41 South, Pinehurst, Georgia, died Tuesday, November 3rd at the Chris Regional Hospital in Cordele, Georgia. Survivors include three loving and devoted children, Mr. Sean Nicholson Martin, Mrs. Catrice Taylor and her husband, Mr. Sean Taylor, and Mrs. Courtney Hinkle and her husband, Mr. Joe Hinkle. 4 beloved grandchildren, Jalen, Jakari, Amari, and Tyree. A beloved brother, Mr. Herbert Henderson Jr., and his wife, Mrs. Frankie Henderson of Atlanta, Georgia. Her beloved and devoted sister, Mrs. Lenora Spivey of New Jersey, and Miss Mercy Dean Mathis and her husband, Mr. Lonnie Mathis of Dooley County, Georgia. A host of other relatives and many sorrowing friends survive. Retired educator, Mrs. Gloria Dean Henderson Martin, age 71, of 9310 Highway 41 South, Pinehurst, Georgia. The funeral service for retired educator, Mrs. Gloria Dean Henderson Martin, will be held today, Sunday, November 8th at 12 noon at the Dooley County High School Football Stadium in Diana, Georgia. The burial will follow at the Henderson Johnson Family Cemetery in Pinehurst, Georgia. The Reverend Jerry Sanders, pastor of the Bethlehem Baptist Church, will officiate. Mr. Eddie Lee Palmer, age 54, of 109 North Bass Street, Cordele, Georgia, died Thursday. Mr. Eddie Lee Palmer, age 54, of 109 North Bass Street, Cordele, Georgia, died Thursday, November 5th, at the Chris Regional Hospital in Cordele, Georgia. Survivors include his loving and devoted parents, Mother Cora Lee Palmer of Cordele, Georgia, Deacon James Palmer Jr. and his wife, Mrs. Ozzie Palmer of Cordele, Georgia, his beloved sisters, Mrs. Virginia A. Harvey, Miss Mary E. Coleman and her husband, Mr. Raymond Coleman, and Mrs. Brenda L. Palmer, all of Cordele, Georgia. His beloved brothers, Mr. Edward Palmer and his wife, Mrs. Mary Palmer of Vienna, Georgia, Mr. Willie Palmer and Mr. Johnny Palmer, all of Cordele, Georgia. His beloved aunts and uncles, Mrs. Mattie Eva Mason and her husband, Mr. Jeff Mason, Mrs. Earlene Shorter and her husband, Mr. Johnny Shorter, Mr. Clarence Sanders and his wife, Mrs. Jessie May Sanders, and Mr. Eddie Sanders, all of Cordele, Georgia, Mrs. Frances Clark of Thickpen and her husband, Mr. E.J. Thickpen of Florida, Mrs. Virginia Harris and her husband, Mr. Ronnie Harris of Warner Robins, Georgia. A host of nieces and nephews, many cousins, other relatives, and many sorrowing friends survive. Mr. Eddie Lee Palmer, age 54, of 109 North Bass Street, Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for Mr. Eddie Lee Palmer will be held Wednesday, November 11th at 12 noon, graveside at the Bethel Cemetery in Cordele, Georgia, with the ministers selected officiating. The public walk-up visitation will be held Tuesday, November 10th from 1 p.m. until 5 p.m. at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. Mrs. Luella Ridley Strouder, age 72, of 801 West 22nd Avenue, Cordele, Georgia, died Wednesday, October 21st, 2020, at the Cordele Health and Rehabilitation Center in Cordele, Georgia. Survivors include her loving and devoted son, Mr. Edward Tyrone Ridley of Cordele, Georgia, her beloved and devoted mother, Mother Emma Love Jackson of Cordele, Georgia, one sister, Mrs. Anita Williams of Cordele, Georgia, her beloved brothers, Mr. Frederick Jackson, Mr. Scotty Jackson, both of Cordele, Georgia, a host of nieces and nephews, many cousins to include her special cousin, Mrs. Barbara Ann Clay, and Mrs. Jacomba Morrison, a host of other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends to include special family friends, Mrs. Jackie Ridley, Mrs. Gwendolyn Thomas, Miss Beverly Patrick, Miss Clara Dixon, Jalen Jackson, and Miss Patricia Critley. Survived Mrs. Luella Ridley Strawder, age 72, of 801 West 22nd Avenue, Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for Mrs. Luella Ridley Strawder will be announced at a later date, pending the completion of the arrangements. Mrs. Authentic Devon Davis Parker, age 40, of 605 Blackshear Road, Cordele, Georgia, died Thursday, November 5th, at Emory University Hospital in Atlanta, Georgia. Survivors include her beloved husband, Mr. Derek Parker of Cordele, Georgia, her beloved children, Miss Africa Putman of Unadilla, Georgia, Mr. Ladarius Davis of Americas, Georgia, Miss Jacori Moore of Cordele, Georgia. 3 beloved grandchildren, her loving and devoted mother, Mrs. Sheila M. West, and her husband, Mr. Scotty West of Cordele, Georgia. Her beloved brothers, Mr. Reem Davis Jr. of Ashburn, Georgia, Mrs. Corey Davis of Lithonia, Georgia, Mr. Sidney Yah of Cordele, Georgia, Mr. Chad Spivey of Tifton, Georgia, a beloved aunt, Mrs. Mary Frances Davis of Cordele, Georgia, her beloved godmother, Mrs. Julia Brown of Cordele, Georgia, a god sister, Mrs. Rolanda Hoggerbrook of Cordele, Georgia, a host of other relatives, and many, many sorrowing friends survive. Mrs. Authentia Devon Davis Parker, age 40, of 605 Blackshear Road, Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for Mrs. Authentia Devon Davis Parker will be announced at a later date, pending the completion of the arrangements. The J.W. Williams Funeral Directors, serving Cordele and Diana, are in charge of each of these arrangements during this week. Friends, that conclude our funeral notices for this morning. And as always, we do remind you concerning our funeral arrangements planning available at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home, with packages available with a single pay, a 3-year pay, a 5-year pay, and a 10-year pay. So please stop by and talk with us concerning your pre-funeral arrangements needs available at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. And also whole life insurance is available at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home.
And now for our morning announcements. You're invited to worship with the New Poplar Spring Baptist Church this morning with Sunday morning worship service beginning at 9:45 a.m., Wednesday evening worship service at 6:45 p.m. And you may join each of these worship services via conference call by calling 253-993-3761. Again, via conference call, 253-993-3761. Pastor Johnny Dean, pastor. You're also invited to worship with the Greater Mars Tabernacle Baptist Church via conference call, and the conference call schedule is as follows. Sunday morning worship service at 9 o'clock a.m., Tuesday midday prayer service begins at 12 o'clock noon. Thursday prayer meeting and Bible study will begin at 6 o'clock p.m. The conference call-in number is 229-329-7611. Again, the conference call-in number is 229-329-7611. Dr. K.M. Williams is the pastor. The New St. Stephen's Church invites you to share with them in the 5th anniversary celebration of its beloved pastor, Dr. Frankie Harmon. The anniversary celebration will be on Sunday, November the 8th, beginning at 11 o'clock a.m. That afternoon, between the hours of 3 and 4 p.m., the Gospel and Gold celebration honoring the late Dr. Irma Lee Smith will be held. Everyone is invited to come by, drive by, honk, and wave as they celebrate the 5th anniversary celebration of the pastor, Dr. Frankie Harmon, and they honor the memory of Dr. Irma Lee Smith through the Gospel and Gold celebration. Sunday, November the 8th, beginning at 11 o'clock a.m.
And now for dedications. Our first selection this morning is dedicated to the following in memory of Mr. John Patrick Jr., who departed this life November 4th, 2017. Dedication requested by his beloved mother, Mother Ida Bell Patrick, and the entire Patrick family, gone but not forgotten. In loving memory of my nephew, Mr. Michael C. West, who would have celebrated his birthday November 7th. Dedication requested by his beloved parents, his sister, and his brothers, and the entire West and Johnson family, and all of the members of the Greater Mars Tabernacle Missionary Baptist Church. We pause and remember Mr. Michael C. West, gone but not forgotten. Our first selection this morning is dedicated to the following. Happy 10th anniversary to Deacon Kenny and Mrs. Shanita Grace, who celebrated their anniversary Thursday, November 5th. Dedication requested by the Grace and Collier family and the management and staff of the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. Happy anniversary and many, many more. And God bless your union and keep it strong. Our first selection this morning goes out to the following. Happy 92nd anniversary to our beloved Mother Lenora McNeil, who celebrated her birthday Tuesday, November 3rd, dedication requested by her beloved children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren, and all of the members of the Cordial Church of God in Christ. Happy birthday to our beloved Mother Lenora McNeil, 92nd birthday, and looking great. God bless you, and many, many more. Happy birthday to Mr. Jamal Killings, who celebrated his birthday Friday, November 6th. Dedication requested by his beloved family. And special birthday wish again goes out to my sister, Mrs. Maddie Mae Johnson, better known as Sister Girl, who celebrated her 80th birthday on November 1st there. Happy birthday, Sister Girl, and many, many more. Happy birthday to my sister, Mrs. Maddie Mae Johnson, better known as Sister Girl. Our first selection this morning is dedicated to the following: Mrs. Mary Kendrick and family, Deacon Dennis Harris and family, Miss Pamela Harris and family, Mr. and Mrs. Ricky Harmon and family, Mrs. Mary Frances Davis and family, Mr. Justin Colbert Jr. and family, Miss Yolanda Donaldson and family, Miss Debbie Cross and family, Mr. Tommy Glenn and family, Mr. Judge Glenn and family, Mother Jessie Ezel and family, and Mrs. B.J. Ezel and the staff of B.J.'s Diner, Mother Willie McGill and family, Miss Burl Patrick and family, Miss Mary Taylor and family, Deacon Zachary and Miss Lavetta Fields and family, Miss Mashonda Holmes and family, Mrs. Martha Ruth Westbrook and family of Araby, Georgia, the Reverend Donnie and Mrs. Amanda Hall and family, the Reverend and Mrs. Jessie Watts and family, Deacon Sammy and Mrs. Fanny Montford and family, Miss Betty Epps and family, Miss Latasha Smith and family, Miss Rosa Epps and family, Mrs. Vera Card and family, Miss Dorothy Paul and family, Miss Val Card and family, Mr. F.D. Lawton and family, Mrs. Barbara Roberts and family, Miss Liz Latasha Trice and family, the Carter family, Miss Shawn Hutchins and family, Miss Zelma Jackson and family, Mrs. Vivian Daniels and family, Miss Jackie Lattimore and family, Miss Lottie Tarbert and family, the Epps and Lawton family, Miss Sarah Jackson and family, Miss Patricia White and family, Miss Frances Relaford and family, Miss Bernice Relaford and family, Miss Corrine Passmore and family, Miss Geraldine Perry and family, Mother Mary P. Cola Jackson and family, Miss Gwen Jackson and family, Missionary Irene and the Reverend L.C. Cantrell and family, Miss Clara Nell Carter and family, Miss Christine Graham and family, Mrs. Mary Wellens and family, Deacon Vet T. and Mrs. Willie Mae Crane and family of Pinehurst, Georgia, Mrs. Doris Wise and family, Dr. Beverly Bolden and family, Mr. Chester Knight Williams and family, Miss Willie Mae Leary and family of Hatley, Georgia, Deacon Earl Leary and family, Miss Patricia Leary and family, Mr. Eddie Leary and family, Mr. William Carter and the entire Carter family of Hatley, Georgia, Miss Pearl Reed and family, Miss Maggie Harmon and family, Mother Jessie Kate Harmon and family, Mrs. Eddie Mae Cooks and family, Ms. Ethel Fullwood and family, Missionary Clement Jones and family, the Reverend Leonard Boston and family, Mrs. Lily Mae Rockwell and family, Mrs. Jackie Balaam and family, the McAdoo family, Wilcox County, Mr. Calvin Smith and family, Mrs. Sandra Simpson and family, Mr. Robert Harvey and family, Mr. Harold Bryan and family, Mrs. Martha Hayes and family, Mr. Cleveland Paul and family, Mrs. Martha King and family, Mr. and Mrs. John L. Williams and family, Miss Betty Rivers and family, Mr. Tyrone and Miss Angela Walker and family, the Reverend Terrell Tate and family, Mr. Larry Bryan and family, Mr. Alvin Adams and family, Mr. Brina Smith and family, Mrs. Easter May Byram and family, and the entire Byram family, to my neighbor, Mrs. Theron Jones and family, and the entire Jones and Talbot family, Mrs. Juanita and Mr. Johnny Tarbert and family. Our first election for this morning. Apologize. We're having technical difficulties this morning, so please bear along with us. We continue with our dedications. Mr. Roscoe Anderson and family, Mr. Mika Hardy and family, Mr. Marcus Carter and family, Ms. Tia James and family, Mrs. Jasmine Smith and family, Mr. and Mrs. Jerome Anderson and family, Mr. Justin Ross and family, Mrs. Mary Frances Mathis and family, Ms. Jeanette West and family, Mrs. Henry Mae Cherry and family, Mrs. Manny Sue Bryant and family, Mrs. Ernestine Woodson and family, Mayor Eddie Daniels and family, Mr. and Mrs. Roosevelt Lucas and family, Mr. and Mrs. Sonny Daniels and family, Deacon and Mrs. Carl Reuben Smith and family, Mrs. Fannie Mae Lester and family, Deacon Theodore Key and family, Deacon and Mrs. Joseph Williams and family, Miss Sakithia Bryan and family, Mr. and Mrs. John Henry Bembry and family, Mrs. Carrie Mae Holt and family, Deacon and Mrs. Eddie Clyde Allman and family, Mr. and Mrs. Eddie B. Woodson and family, Mr. James Boston and family, the Morrell family, Mrs. Annie Watson and family, Mr. and Mrs. Larry Harris and family, Mrs. Jasper Bryant and family, Deacon and Mrs. Morris McClendon and family, Mrs. L.C. Chives and family, Mr. E.K. Cheney and family, Mr. and Mrs. Carl Whitehead and family, the Time Whitehead family of Unadilla, Mr. and Mrs. W.B. Bryant and family, Mrs. Ola Beal and family, the Reverend Charles Anderson and family of Unadilla, Georgia, Deacon and Mrs. London Childs and family, Mrs. Ethel Ross and family, Mr. Evan Dawson and family, Mr. and Mrs. Anderson Jenkins and family of Vienna, Georgia, Miss Laverne Anderson and family, Miss Rebecca Brown and family, Mother Louise James Everett and family of Vienna, Georgia, Deacon Raymond Anderson and family, Mrs. Brula Anderson and family, Mrs. Mary Lizzie Bryant and family, Mrs. Doretha Williams and family, Mrs. Deborah Redding and family, Mrs. Alice Oliver and family, Mrs. Janie Winters and family, the Reverend and Mrs. Tommy Law and family, Deacon David Crosby and family, Mr. Calvin Lester and family, Mrs. Betty Jean James and family, the Reverend and Mrs. Layfield Buckholtz and family of Unadilla, Georgia, and the entire Buckholtz family, Deacon and Mrs. Freddie Buckholtz and family, Wilcox County, Mrs. Geneva West and family, Mr. Walter Kingdom and family, Mrs. Eddie Cobb and family, Mr. and Mrs. Frank Lester and family, Mrs. Ethel Lee Jones and family, Mrs. Angela Travis and family, Mrs. Mary Geary and family, Mrs. Ida B. Waters and family, Mrs. Rosa May Caldwell and family, Miss Christine Barron and family, Miss Seth Leggett and family, Mrs. Daisy Wiggins and family, Miss Linda Leggett and family, Mr. John Johnson and family, Mrs. Alberta Felder and family, Miss Cecilia Williams and family, Mrs. Leanna Wade and family, Mr. and Mrs. Dennis Everett and family, Ms. Eleanor Gay and family, Mrs. Isaiah Ross and family, Mrs. William Gaston and family, Mrs. Sam Gaston and family, Mrs. Rosa Mae McKenzie and family, the Hunt and Collier family, Mrs. Lester Kennedy, Mr. Lester Kennedy and family, Mrs. Donna Howard and family, Mrs. Jenny Smith and family, Mr. and Mrs. Jimmy Redding and family, Deacon and Mrs. Benny Howard and family, Mr. and Mrs. Willie C. Washington and family, the Adams family, Miss Lily Toots and family, Mrs. Carol Shaw and family, Mr. Bobby Lee Royal and family, Mr. and Mrs. John Hoggrove and family, Mr. Son Marshall and family, Deacon and Mrs. Leroy James and family, Deacon Elmo James and family, Miss Alice West and family, Mrs. Mary B. Sutton and family, Mr. and Mrs. Lewis Maynard and family, Deacon Lonnie Anderson and family, Mrs. Rosa Howard and family, Miss Martha Clay and family, Cornell Chris City Chairman, Deacon John Wiggins and family, Mrs. Gabrielle Demery and family, Mrs. Geraldine Johnson and family, Deacon William and Mrs. Robbie Durham and family of Albany, Georgia, and hope that he's feeling well this morning. Mr. and Mrs. Sammy Hill and family, Mr. and Mrs. Paul Johnson and family, Mr. and Mrs. Ernest Reese and family, Deacon Eddie Porter and family, Miss Denise Denard and family, Mr. and Mrs. Melvin Jones and family, Mr. Lonnie Walker and family, Mrs. Carolyn Jackson and family, Pastor and Elder Billy Sanford and family, Deacon and Mrs. Alfred Hoggebrook and family, Mrs. Gladys Foster and family, the Gamble family, Mr. and Mrs. Buford Royal Jr. and family, Mrs. Dora Taylor and family, Miss Tawana Leonard and family, Mrs. Jacqueline Leonard and family, Mr. Robert Lee McLeod and family, Mr. Charles McLeod and family, Mrs. Nettie Bush and family, Mr. and Mrs. Alvin Beal and family, Mrs. Connie James and family, Mother Minnie Fletcher and family, Mother Nell Ford and family, Brother and Mrs. James Hughes and family, Deacon James Smith and family, Mrs. Charlie Butts and family, Mrs. Linda Askew and family, Miss Janice Mumford and family, Mrs. Dorothy King and family, and to the Reverend Dion Jones and family. And certainly we would like to thank the Reverend Dion Jones for his contribution toward aiding us in making sure that people got to the polls safely on this past Tuesday. I'd like to thank the Reverend Dion Jones for his contribution. Thank you, Reverend, and thank you for your friendship. Mr. and Mrs. Eugene Ford and family, Miss Fanny Royal and family, Mrs. Johnny Campbell and family, the Spear family, Mrs. Aletha Askew, church clerk and church trustee of the New Oak Grove Baptist Church, the Reverend and Mrs. Charles Perry Jr. and family, Deacon and Mrs. Rodney Teal and family, Dr. and Mrs. Henry Young and family, Mrs. Betty Roberson and family, beloved retired commissioner, Mr. and Mrs. A.J. Rivers and family, Mrs. Ida Ruth Bryant and family, Mr. and Mrs. Jerome Outlaw and family. It is certainly with the deepest regret that we make the following announcement. Retired educator, Mrs. Gloria Dean Henderson Martin, age 71, of 9310 Highway 41 South, Pinehurst, Georgia, died Tuesday, November 3rd, at the Chris Regional Hospital in Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for retired educator Mrs. Gloria Dean Henderson Martin will be held today, Sunday, November 8th at 12 noon at the Dooley County High School Football Stadium in Vienna, Georgia. The burial will follow at the Henderson Johnson Family Cemetery in Pinehurst, Georgia. The Reverend Jerry Sanders, pastor of the Bethlehem Baptist Church, will officiate. Mr. Eddie Lee Palmer, age 54, of 109 North Bass Street, Cordele, Georgia, died Thursday, November 5th, at the Chris Regional Hospital in Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for Mr. Eddie Lee Palmer will be held Wednesday, November 11th at 12 noon, graveside at the Bethel Cemetery in Cordele, Georgia, with the minister selected officiating. The public walk-up visitation will be held Tuesday, November 10th from 1 p.m. until 5 p.m. at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home. Mrs. Luella Ridley Strawder, age 72, of 801 West 22nd Avenue, Cordele, Georgia, died Wednesday, October 21st, 2020, at the Cordele Health and Rehabilitation Center in Cordele, Georgia. The funeral service for Mrs. Luella Ridley Strawder will be announced at a later date, pending the completion of the arrangements. Mrs. Orthynthia Devon Davis Parker, age 40, of 605 Blackshear Road, Cordele, Georgia, died Thursday, November 5th, at the Emory University Hospital in Atlanta, Georgia. The funeral service for Mrs. Orthynthia Devon Davis Parker will be announced at a later date, pending the completion of the arrangements. The J.W. Williams Funeral Directors, serving Cordele and Vienna, are in charge of each of these arrangements during this week. Our next and final selection for this morning is dedicated to the bereaved families whose loved one was laid to rest during the past week. The family of Mother Evelyn Redding Smith, age 88, of Vienna, Georgia. The family of United States Army veteran Corporal Avery Delshawn Hillman of the Chris County Sheriff's Office, age 50. Beloved church mother, Mother Mary Jean Clark Montfrey, age 86, of Cordele, Georgia. The family of Mr. Arthur James Nance Jr., age 59, of Cordele, Georgia. The family of Mrs. Ruby Lee Marshall Daniels, age 65, of Rochelle, Georgia. Our program this morning is dedicated to the bereaved families whose loved ones will be laid to rest during this week. The family of retired educator Mrs. Gloria Dean Henderson Martin, age 71, of Pinehurst, Georgia. The family of Mr. Eddie Lee Palmer, age 54, of Cordell, Georgia. The family of Mrs. Luella Ridley Straughter, age 72, of Cordell, Georgia. The family of Mrs. Authentia Devon Davis Parker, age 40, of Cordell, Georgia. Our program is dedicated to all of the sick and shut-in, to all patients in the local and surrounding hospitals, nursing homes, and rehabilitation centers, to our beloved ministers and their devoted family members, to all retired educators, to our men and women serving in our armed forces, both stateside and abroad, to all veterans, and to everyone who listens to our program on each Sunday morning. It's a pleasure for us to bring it to you. Our program goes out in memory of our past president, Dr. Napoleon Williams, to my wife, Mrs. Calandra Wilkerson Parker, and family. Goes out to my son, Mr. Jai Wilkerson Parker, to my mother-in-law, Ms. Billy Ann Hall, and family, to my brother, retired Chief Master Sergeant Norman F. Dexter, to his wife, Dr. Gwendolyn Maxine Dexter, and family, especially to my niece, Mrs. Toria Dexter. Hope that she's feeling well this morning. Goes out to my sister, Mrs. Maddie Mae Johnson, again, who celebrated her 80th birthday on November 1st. And to my sister, Mrs. Patsy Jackson, and her husband, Sir Jim Jackson, and family. Goes out to my nephew, Deacon Kenneth Smith, program chairman of the Greater Morris Tabernacle Missionary Baptist Church, and to our pastor, Dr. K.M. Williams, to his wife, Sister Kathy Williams, and family. And again, invite you to worship with us this morning via conference call at 9 a.m. Or you may visit Facebook Live at 9 a.m. Our program this morning goes out especially to Mrs. Deidre Barthel and her mother and family of Americus, Georgia. This program goes out again to each and everyone who listens to our program on each Sunday morning. It's a pleasure for us to bring it to you. God bless you. And certainly we pause to thank God for the outcome of our national election, electing Joe Biden, President-elect of these United States, and Kamala Harris as Vice President of the United States. We thank God for remembering his people in this time. God bless our nation and keep it strong. Let us continue to pray one for another and be mindful still of the virus that's still alive and well throughout the land there. So remember to wear a mask and to protect one another as we travel from one place to the next there. God bless you.
Thank you for joining us this morning. We hope you've enjoyed our program. Tune in again on next Sunday morning. And remember, in your time of need, contact the competent, capable, and dependable staff at the J.W. Williams Funeral Home.